Okay, it's 3:01. We have 17 people. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to session 4 of the Career Transition Workshop. We're really glad you're here, and I'll say hello in advance to people who join us in the next few minutes. So I'm John Luce, and I am humbled to be the facilitator for this meeting. It's being hosted on Zoom by Jeff Morris. I don't know where the DFW area would be without, for employment seekers, without Jeff Morris. And we also have with us a number of people that I'll get to in just a moment. But I want to take an opportunity to thank Stonebar Community Church, who hosts the Career Transition Workshop, particularly when we do it in person live. And they have been supporting us while we've been doing this virtually. And we are really honored and humbled that they've enabled their people to back us up and to use resources so that we can get this workshop out to the community. I want to make everybody aware for now that this event is being recorded, and currently it's being broadcast live on Facebook on the Career DFW page in Facebook. The recording for the future will be on Career DFW on Facebook, and will also be on YouTube on the Career USA channel for others to view in the future. Please be aware that by participating in this event, since it's being recorded, if you post a comment in the chat box or have your microphone or camera on, you are implicitly giving consent for your comments, name, and picture to appear on those platforms. So, moving along, after the presentation by today's presenter, Gail Bridgeman, who I'll introduce in more detail in a moment, please use the chat box below to enter your questions for Gail. Please begin your post with a question mark and then your question. Your name will automatically appear above your post. After the presentation, our panel of experts will answer your questions, and I will be moderating that as well as Jeff. So please enter your questions in the comment field if you're watching on Facebook. So again, in Facebook, it's in the comment field, and on the Zoom meeting, it's in the chat notes. So our agenda is pretty simple. We're going to have a message of encouragement from Steve Fisher, who is the pastor of Care Ministries at Stonebar Community Church in Frisco, Texas. Steve is the head pastor of the Care Ministries he leads a team that provides hope for those who are broken, discouraged, and in need of spiritual, emotional support. Steve is a licensed professional counselor as well as a pastor, a graduate of Dallas Theological Seminary, and he holds 2 master's degrees. So he has been in corporate America as well, so he knows what it's like to be out there in the field. Our presentation today will be given by Gail Bridgeman, and it's on interviewing. Gail is a certified career coach and has been with Lee Hecht Harrison for 11 years. Gail consults and trains on all aspects of career development and transition, including resume building, marketing plan development, branding, and social media presence. Her passion is LinkedIn. She also coaches on networking, interviewing, and negotiation preparation for salary negotiation. So, our expert panel is here for the most part, except for one member, and Gail will be on that panel as well. Rex Sowett. Rex is one of the co-founders of the Career Transition Workshop. and currently is a human resources recruitment and staffing manager at Jungle Aviation and Radio Service, or JARS. And he is a human resources advisor and practitioner who partners with companies to aspire winning with entrepreneurial innovation and delivering an employee-first culture. Rex is a trained career transition and planning coach. And again, 20 years ago, this coming April in 2021, it'll be 20 years since he and Gail Houston co-founded the Career Transition Workshop. And there are over 20,000 registered users who have attended that workshop over the years. Lori Davis is also with us on that panel. And Lori is a career recruiter and has been with the Career Transition Workshop. I lost how many years she's been with us, but she's been a faithful member of this panel for a long time. Of course, we have Foster Williams, who's the founder of the Career Search Network and moderates numerous groups for people seeking employment in the HR field, as well as many other marketplaces. And he is the founder of searchforyouinc.com, his website, and is with us today. Jeff Morris, the founder of Career DFW and careerusa.org. Like I said earlier in the call, is a fellow who pays it forward on a daily basis by moderating and I'm losing words here. It's an age thing. I'm having a senior moment. Sorry about that. Moderates groups, his own networking group on Friday mornings, assisting people to get further along in their search for employment and land. So he is a vital resource to this community. So that's our panel. So we're going to continue on today with Steve Fisher's message of encouragement. Now this is a replay. Steve has been extremely busy lately and is in the middle of composing some new messages that he wants to share with this workshop, but up to date, he hasn't been able to get them over to me. So we're gonna do a scene before presentation from Steve Fisher.
Hi, my name is Pastor Steve Fisher, and I'm the Care Ministries pastor for Stonebriar Community Church in Frisco, Texas. On behalf of our senior pastor, Dr. Chuck Swindoll, we are grateful to continue our association with the Career Transition Workshop. Stonebriar has had a long association with Rex and his team, and we are humbled to continue to support their efforts during these unprecedented times. So first and foremost, Rex, to your team, God bless you all for the work that you're doing. Now, Rex has asked me to say a few words of encouragement before this workshop begins. And to be quite honest with you, that's a pretty easy task for me at most times, to speak encouragement. But I am a little bit more reflectful, and I want to choose my words wisely, for this is truly an unprecedented time. And the last thing I want to do is to come off and trivialize anything or speak words that just are meant to make you feel good. I pray these words, you will draw some meaning that is truly helpful for you in these times. The last several weeks in my role at Stonebriar, I've met with dozens and dozens of people over the Zoom or Teams ministries. And there's a common refrain. Goes something like this: I am where I am, and it is what it is. And in those utterings, there's a sense of hopelessness. Many times a sense of, I have no idea what to do or where to go. And so I pray that through the few moments I have, perhaps you might find a different perspective that will help you move through this into your next appointment, into your next assignment. So I grew up in Wisconsin, lots of farms around Wisconsin, and I worked on those for summer jobs. And I remember a very consistent process that all farmers, or quite frankly even gardeners, go through. And it's called the law of the farm. And I'm just going to talk about really the first two pieces of that, and perhaps next time we can visit and I can talk through the rest of it. But the first part of getting the soil ready to plant involves a very violent process, a process that is disruptive, to say the least, and that is the tilling of the soil. I remember taking a hoe and just hammering into hard soil from the cold Wisconsin winters. And it was hard work, and it was very disruptive with rocks and dirt and everything flying around. Looked very chaotic. But it was necessary, wasn't it? For if Scripture talks about, and again, we don't throw seeds on hard ground. They won't take root. And so during this COVID season, many who have been displaced or furloughed from jobs have had an abrupt disruption of their life. And many of the things that they counted on have been broken up in a very quick and sometimes very disruptive and perhaps even violent fashion. You didn't see it coming. You didn't plan for it. You had no idea. But that disruption, that that breaking of the soil, that breaking of the routine creates an opportunity. And that comes next, and that is the planting of the seed. Now, common sense would say you don't plant corn and expect potatoes to grow. What you plant is what you expect to harvest. And so the question I have for all of us is, what type of seeds are you planting right now? Are you developing new skills? Meeting new people, perhaps looking at a different life pathway? Are you planting those seeds that will help you? Are you planting seeds that are still perhaps stuck in some bitterness? Planting seeds that are full of fear, perhaps even anger? Seeds that keep you distant from people as opposed to involved with people? For the seeds you plant after the disruption of the soil will dictate what you will harvest when it does come harvest time. And there will be a harvest time. I'm confident of that. Perhaps you are planting seeds that will give you a new perspective on your life. New opportunities to look at these higher level questions sometimes. What's life about? What am I doing with my life? Where do I want to go? Perhaps these times will even encourage you to look at your faith differently. Perhaps faith wasn't a part of your life at all. And perhaps this is a time where you're asking the question, okay, God, if you're there, what do you got for me? How are you going to help me through this? Perhaps it's a time for some of you who may revisit the faith of your youth, the faith that long ago has not been part of your life. Those are the opportunities, I think, that exist now. So in the midst of the fear, and in the midst of the concern, in the midst of the uncertainty, and in the midst of the responsibility to begin to look for new work, there's also a new opportunity because of this disruption. And the question really is what seeds are you planting? What seeds do you want to take root and grow and ultimately harvest as we go down the road of your life? I don't think many of our day-to-day busyness sometimes allows us to reflect on things like this. And again, I don't want to come across again as dismissing the real concerns: keeping the lights on, keeping the mortgage, keeping a child in school, keeping a college opportunity going. All of those are real. And I am confident concerns that we all have. But in those concerns, there does create an opportunity. And I would encourage you to begin to ask yourself those questions, to ask others those questions, to don't let this season go without an opportunity to look at what you and what your life is planting. So there's a story that I want to tell you, and some of you may have heard it before, but I think it sends a message. So a while back, I'm not sure the price point anymore, the most expensive coffee was a coffee called Kopi Luwak, and it came from Indonesia. And the reason this coffee was the most expensive was because of a unique harvesting method. You see, there's a cat in Indonesia called a civet cat, like a bobcat, we would say. And this bobcat has taste buds for this particular plant in Indonesia. This particular coffee plant. And so the civet cat will eat the berries, the coffee berries, from this plant. And there's something unique about the digestive enzymes, apparently, of the civet cat, that when they eat the bean, the enzymes that are in within the cat create in these beans the most robust, rich, exquisite, I've never had a cup of this coffee, exquisite bean that makes the most delicious cup of coffee, I'm told, that exists. The unique part is this, is the harvesting of those beans. I'm going to let that sit for a second. See, the civet cat eats the beans. They're brought into the cat's digestive system, and then they're pushed out. And the harvesting method is just what you think it is. People go through the scat of the civet cat, and they pick these beans out. And then they're roasted, and they make the coffee. And so I think the metaphor perhaps is playing out for you. That's what it feels like sometimes. That there's just a big mess. And here's what I'm confident about. That our God, the God of the Bible, has this brilliant ability, this amazing ability, to reach down in the mess of our life and pick out the most valuable parts of you and I. You see, He loves us. He says in His Word that He will never abandon us. He will never leave us. COVID-19 virus, furloughed, my job has been eliminated. Whatever our life brings us, our God looks down in the mess that exists and pulls out you and I and says, this is rich. This has flavor. This has texture. This has value. This has value. That's you and I. And so I hope during this season that you are looking at, after this disruption, what seeds have you planted? Those seeds that will bring a bountiful and good harvest. Seeds that talk about new skills, new friends, new people, new perspectives, new relationships. Perhaps that relationship with God is at the very top of that list. But I am confident that no matter what mess you're sitting in right now, there's a God that loves you, that has the capacity to reach down and find beauty in the midst of a mess. And that beauty is you. So I know you are in for an incredible session with the Career Transition Workshop. I pray this short message encouraged you that no matter where you're at, God loves you and will see you through it. Those aren't just church words that as a pastor I'm supposed to say. I believe that with every ounce of my being. So enjoy your time. If there's any questions, if there's anything we can do at Stonebriar Community Church to help you out, perhaps you need a little more encouragement, please feel free to contact me. Again, my name is Steve Fisher. My phone number is 469-252-5368. My email, you can get it off our website. It's Steve Fisher, STEVEFISCHER @stonebriar.org. And if there's anything we at Stonebriar can do, we'd be privileged to do that. So have a great session. And again, Rex, and to your entire team, God bless you.
Okay. Always encouraging from Steve. He's not a highfalutin preacher. He's just a good-hearted, loving man. So let me just quickly again review everybody who's on the team for this workshop. Rex Solid and Gail Houston, who are the co-founders. Locke Alderson, who unfortunately is not with us today. Gail Bridgeman, who will be our presenter today. Lori Davis, who presented. Lori, did you present last week or are you next week?
Neither.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
just helping on the panel.
Okay, thank you. Foster Williams, myself, and Jeff Morris. Steve Fisher, who you just heard from. And there are two ladies at Stonebriar Community Church who work with Steve there in the missions department. Karen Hawkins, who's the operations lead in missional living, and Jean Allen, who's the lead administrator. And they're the ones who help us set up the links on the Stonebriar website for this virtual meeting when we're meeting in person. They do a lot of hard physical back work, coordinating everything in the logistics for us to get together. And we pray that come 2021, things will improve so we can do this in person again. Normally, the in-person meeting is a 9 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. all-day meeting where we're able to serve your lunch. But with the virtual, it's BYOL. And sorry, I had to throw that in. And so we're just grateful to everybody on this slide for all the hard work they do to put this information together, to equip people seeking employment with tools and techniques and resources to speedily land their next opportunity. Okay, so having said all that, you might want to select speaker view as Gail presents her presentation. That way you'll be able to see the slides in full array. And if you have a question for the panel again, please use the chat box to enter that question if you're on the Zoom broadcast. Start it with a question mark and then your question. And after the presentation, we'll try to get to everybody's questions. If you're on Facebook, please enter your question in the comments field, and we will be monitoring that live session on Facebook so that we can make sure and get to everybody's inquiries. So now I'm going to turn it over to Gail Bridgeman, who is going to give her educate us on some of the better parts of conducting interviews with people, both formal and informal. So Gail, thank you for being here, and it's all yours.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, awesome. Now I'm going to go ahead and see if my screen sharing is going to work now. It looks like maybe it is. Does things look good on your side, John?
Yes, it hasn't full. It's filling in sometimes with this platform when you go ahead with a slide. I know Rex had that issue this morning. It takes a while for the attendees to. There's a delay. Okay.
Awesome. Okay, very good. All right. So you can see my slide deck. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, very good. All right. So good afternoon. We are so thrilled to be here to help you job seekers with any kind of insights that we can share. And just a couple of housekeeping items as we get started. I want to thank John Luce and Jeff Morris, because without both of these gentlemen's support, we would not be able to be here electronically, digitally, doing what we do. They are just amazing, and they put their brains together with all of their expertise to pull this off week after week. And I just want to thank both of you guys, because you are great assets to the Career Transition Workshop team. So thank you so much. I know it takes a lot to do that. So what I'd like to do today, I'm going to go ahead and get started on the slide deck here, and just want to welcome everyone again to the online Career Transition Workshop. For those of you attending today, please note at the end of the slide deck, once I get through the presentation time, there will be a slide with my email address. And I have 3 items that I would like to send to you today if you would like to receive those. But the trick is you're going to have to email me after the workshop and request the items. One is a copy of this slide deck. The other is going to be the section on interviewing, which is in our printed workbook that you would normally receive at the workshop. It's a 15-page long document, and it'll be sent electronically to you if you send me an email to get the detail, because there are a lot of details in the book itself that will give you some insights in some of the things I'm going to talk about today. And then third of all, I have a special 3-page handout on interviewing virtually, a lot of tips and guidance and things like that. So again, these 3 items I will send to each of you as long as you send me an email at the end of the workshop. All righty. So
Gail,
yes, sir.
What would you like them, those that requested, what would you like them to put in the subject line of the email to make it easy for you to discern what that email is for?
That is a great question. You can do CTW Frisco.
Okay.
That's all you have to put, CTW Frisco, in the subject line, and send me the note. You'll see my email at the end, and that way you can say, I want the handouts from today's workshop, and I will be more than happy to send those to you. I'm more than happy to connect with any of you on LinkedIn as well if you wish to invite me. So, okay, let's go ahead and get started. Let's see if I can make my slide deck transition here. We're going to talk about acing that interview and help you land your dream job. I'm going to talk about things to do and things not to do today. And I'm going to talk about some different tips throughout for things you should remember. In today's focus, a little bit different than our workshop in person. Usually I will go through just the general interviewing segment. So I'm going to talk about interviewing in general. Then I have several slides at the last half of the presentation where I focus on interviewing in the virtual world. And what that really means is if you're going to be doing a presentation or an interview virtually via Zoom or any other video platform. So we're going to talk about that. A lot of elements from interviewing in general apply when you're interviewing virtually, but I'm going to break that into a second segment. And then we will wrap up at the very end with questions for the panel of experts. And John has indicated how you need to pose those questions. I won't be taking questions during the presentation right now, but we will be taking those at the very end of the panel. All righty.
Mhm.
So as we move on, we're going to talk about interviewing in general. And there are 3 segments that I see for interviewing in general. One is preparing for the event, the upfront work. The second is the event itself. And then the third is your follow-up after the event. So let's talk a little bit about preparing for the event. There are several aspects involved in preparing. One is mental. What are you thinking? How do you get ready? The other is physical. How do you prepare to physically show up for that interview? And then the third one is virtual. That's your brand. And we're going to spend a couple of minutes on that as well. Okay, preparing, the mental part. I need you to research the company and the position first. I can't tell you how many times I have interviewed candidates and they don't have a clue as to what the company that I'm working for does, where I'm doing the interviewing for them to join us. So, and in today's day and age, with everything electronically available, this is just so critical that you research the company and the position, do whatever you can to get the information you need. Assess your skills. What skills do you bring to the table that are going to make you the right fit for that role? Think about what answers you would have to questions, okay? Because you're going to be asked a lot of questions by multiple people, perhaps, in the interview process. So think about how are you going to answer different questions? And in the workbook that I'm going to send you after the workshop today, you will see a series of questions that go into that workbook, and that will give you some great ideas on the types of questions I'm talking about. And then there are what types of interviews. Back in the old day, you know, there used to be a lot of things to choose from. Is it going to be a phone screen? Is it going to be an in-person interview? Is it a panel interview? Is it some kind of a special project assessment interview? Oh, and now we add the video interview, Zoom or other platforms that are possible. So you need to know what type of interview it's going to be so you can prepare for it. Okay, let's also move over and talk about physically preparing for the interview. There are several parts to the physical preparation. One is your attitude. My tip here today is your attitude is everything. I've been through layoffs a few times in my career myself. I know on the team, the career transition workshop team, every person that serves on this team has been laid off at least once. And so we know what that's like. And sometimes you can have a pity party, and we don't want to have pity parties, especially on the day that we're interviewing, because, you know, so many people have been through so many different things. It's just really important to not be bitter. And if Gail Houston was here, she would laugh at that. So we don't want to be bitter. We want to have a positive attitude because you want to show what great things you bring to the table. The other thing is to think about your appearance. That is separate from the attire that you will wear to the interview. What's your appearance? How does your hair look? Do you have a kept look? Are you, you know, if you color your hair, have you had your hair colored? Look at how you're actually appearing. Do you look like you have a good attitude? Are you smiling? And I know sometimes on video, it feels a little stilted. It's hard for me today thinking, well, there are people out there I'm talking to, but I can't see your faces to have any kind of interaction with body language. So anyway, think about what is your appearance? How do you appear? And are you cleaned up? Do you look professional? Do you fit the role that you're seeking? The other thing is think about what you're going to wear. And that's important, whether it's in person or whether you're virtually on a video screen. What are you going to wear? Do you have an outfit that shows you look appropriate for the job, the role that you are interviewing for? So those are some really important things to think about. Those are things that are attention to the detail as you are preparing. You want to think and plan ahead about those things. Don't wait until the last minute. Okay, let's move on to the next one where we're going to talk a little bit on virtual. I'm not talking about Zoom interviews right now. I'm talking about your brand. What is your brand? You're on social media. I'm sure every one of you today has a LinkedIn profile at the very least. That creates your brand. That tells people what you do. That gives them an idea of where you've worked, what you look like, what your skills and abilities are. What are your qualifications? Many times employers, back when I did recruiting myself, I would go to LinkedIn and I would view people on LinkedIn. I would look at you first before we would even schedule an appointment to have an interview. So that was my first impression. What do you look like in that headshot on LinkedIn? So think about that. What's your first impression? It's in the virtual world. What's your brand? That is very, very important. Make sure that you're telling people what you want them to believe about you. Now, we get to the event itself now. And right now, for the moment, we're going to talk about being in person at the event. We've got 3 topics to cover here. One is the first impression when you walk into that interview. The other is answering questions. And the third point is asking questions. So let's go to the event itself. Now, remember, I just said that on social media, on LinkedIn, for instance, they may have looked at you already and they've gotten some impression based on the photo and your write-up. What do you look like there? Okay. But when you walk into the interview, there are several things that you need to remember. These are really, really important. First of all, arrive promptly. Don't be late. Be prompt, but not too early. Okay. There's kind of that window. 10 to 15 minutes early is okay, but please make sure you're not late. Smile when you walk in. I know interviewing can be nerve-wracking, but put your smile on. You know, that's going to make you look confident, and it's also going to put the others at ease as well. Offer a firm handshake. Yes, even in the COVID world today, I have found that people I'm seeing in person the last couple of months, some people want to still shake hands, and some people want to even hug. You know, those are friends, typically Bible study, classes like that. But keep those things in mind. Even in this era, some people still may want to shake hands. You have to decide your comfort level with something like that, whether you want to shake hands or if you just want to say, well, I prefer to bump elbows or something like that. But just keep that in mind. Those are possibilities. Making eye contact. I can't tell you how many times I've interviewed people that they're looking down at the floor or they're looking out the window to the side. They're not looking at me. And that's in person. And so you really want to make sure you're making eye contact. Again, you might be nervous, but that eye contact, looking at the other person, makes them feel like that you're confident and that you're able to do the job that they're talking to you about. And then last but not least is your body language. When you're in person, if you're sitting in person across the table from a person or a group of people, and let's say you're sitting there with your arms crossed, or you're slouching back in your chair, or you're leaning on your hand, you know, those are the type of things that don't speak well. So think about your body language too. You don't want to do things like that. You want to come across as being very polished and on top of things. All right. Let's talk about the next part of the event, answering questions. The first and most famous question you seem to be asked is, tell me about yourself. And this is not telling people about you're married, you have kids, you have grandkids, you have a dog and a frog at home. We don't want you to talk about things like that. That tell me about yourself question is really important because that sets the stage. Think about what they want to know about you for the role that you're interviewing for. What are some things professionally that you need to share? They'll get to know you personally later on, especially if you join their team. In the workbook that I'll be sending out to you on page 2, in that section, it talks about how you answer, tell me about yourself, and some other basic questions that are always asked in interviews. So you'll be able to take a look at that and get a little bit more detail. Also, the other possible questions are traditional, straightforward questions. Tell me about your successes. Have you ever done this type of a project? Have you supervised people in a virtual setting? Have you managed teams virtually? Think about that. Those are straightforward questions that you have an answer to. The third one that's most important is behavioral questions. I call this story time. The tip here is to use your SOAR stories. Again, in the workbook handout that I'll be sending to you after the workshop. It gives some examples on pages 4 and 5 about behavioral interviewing and what types of questions those compose and how you might answer those. Source stories is really a methodical way of listing out, here's the situation, here are the obstacles I encountered, here were the actions I took, and here were the results. Basically, that's what those 4 letters spell out. And you're telling them about success stories that you have. Questions might be, tell me about a time that you had a challenge with a coworker. Oh, I've never had a problem with a coworker, right? Tell me about a time you've had a challenge with a manager, and how did you handle that? Oh, I've never had a problem with a manager either, right? Think about those questions, because typically they're asking questions that relate to what you might be doing in this new role that you're interviewing for. The reason they're asking questions like this is you're probably going to have those kind of challenges. They want to know, if you've had those challenges, how did you deal with them, or did you sweep things under the rug? So you want to be able to tell stories about how you've handled things that relate to the position that you are interviewing for. Don't make them hypothetical. We want real examples. Okay, another important part of the actual event, answering questions. What about salary? First of all, you need to know the job first and then talk about the money. Someone may want me to do something, and in my own mind, I think that sounds pretty simple. But then when I find out more about the job, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, it's a whole lot more complex than what I thought. Well, could that make a difference between $80,000 a year and $100,000 a year? Based on what they want you to take over and be responsible for, you need to find out first. Don't make assumptions. You have to have an answer. You can't avoid the topic. So do your research. Think about places like salary.com and the Glassdoor to do some research. Now, I have an important tip. This means that you need to plan to come back in 2 weeks. The October 20th session is going to be hosted by Rex Sowett, and he is going to discuss salary negotiations, especially in the COVID world. So make sure you come back and join us then so you can hear Rex's great input on the salary topic, okay? All right, moving on to the next series. There also are a list of questions that are real important for you to think about. When you go to an interview, you're going to be asked a lot of questions. You're going to be told a lot of things by the people that you're meeting with. But guess what? They never cover everything, do they? Think about what are questions that you want to have answered. You get to the end of the interview, and if they say, do you have any questions for me? Please do not be the person that says, nope, you've answered everything. Nothing, I have no questions. Don't do that. It's real important that you have some questions to ask. And in the workbook that I'm going to send to you, again, page 11, that has a whole list on that page of possible questions for you to think about. You may not ask every one of those questions. Please don't do that. But look at those questions and see, there may be 4 or 5 questions that you really want to have answers to as you go through the interview. If they don't answer those questions, at the end they say, do you have any questions for me? And you say, well, yes, I do, as a matter of fact. So there you go. You look like you're engaged. You're showing interest, right? Also, during that interview, assess the fit. It's real important that you determine, can I work with these people? I've interviewed for roles myself in the past where I thought, man, I know the topic, I know the subject, I can do this job. But then when I met the people I'd be working with, in one circumstance, it would have been the person that would have been my manager. I liked all the other people. I felt like we could work well together. I did not connect with that person that would have been my manager. And that was really, really important. And I said, you know, I could do all of these things, but if I can't connect with this person and feel comfortable with this person, it's not going to work. Those things are really important. People take jobs based on people, not just the company itself. And at the end, when you get through this process, if you really want that job, tell them you do. Nothing wrong with that. Are your feelings going to be hurt if they don't pick you? Maybe, but go for it. If you really want that job, ask for it, okay? Now, you've completed the event. You've gone home. What do you do next? You write thank you notes. In this environment, it's real important now that you're going to write thank you notes from an email standpoint. Send those electronically. Do not send stuff snail mail. Many people are working remote from home offices, so you know that they are going to likely get things that you would send unless it goes in their junk box, but hopefully they're going to get thank you notes you might email to them. This really makes you stand out, and oftentimes it is the deciding factor because it made you stand out from other people. Sending that thank you note is just courtesy. Also, if they ask something at the end of the interview or something came up that you thought about, you might be able to include just a short note there that's additional input, okay? Now, sometimes we say, gosh, can I follow up with you in a week to find out where things are at on the job? Either calling or emailing. If you ask for approval to follow up, then do it. Put it on your calendar and follow up. 9 times out of 10, people ask for approval to follow up and then they don't. They never follow up. So do that. Take that initiative. And also you can provide additional information and it shows interest there as well. And last but not least, the gracious conclusion. If they offer you the job and you accept it, that is great. But if they decline you and you do not get offered this role, be gracious anyway. My rule here is that the golden rule, recruiters have memories like elephants, and oftentimes they go to different companies too. So you may have a target company this week and you're interviewing there, and if you're really nasty to the recruiters and really rude, let's say that next month that recruiter moves to another one of your target companies. What are the odds you're going to get an interview at that company as well because you were rude to the recruiter? The nice thing to keep in mind is there may be other positions at that company. Maybe there's a reason why you didn't get this particular position that you interviewed for. So be gracious. Please keep me in mind for other opportunities that may come about. And oftentimes by being that gracious when you're being declined, that will sit well with the recruiters and they may go to bat for you. I had a client that happened to a few years ago. He ended up getting a job with his target company the 3rd time around in a 2-month period, having a series of interviews. He didn't land the first one. He wrote nice letters and was gracious. The recruiters wanted to go to bat for him, so they tried again, and he didn't get that second one. Guess what? The 3rd offer he got was actually a better position, higher paying, more money, more fulfilling. And so that happened because they told him afterward he was so gracious and so appreciative, even in defeat, if you will. So keep those things in mind because, they're just trying to find the best fit for the company. And sometimes it's not about your personal offense, but just finding that right fit. Okay. Now we're going to hop over to interviewing in the virtual world. That talked about interviews, assuming you were going in person, all of that good stuff. Let's think about interviewing in the virtual world on a computer, on Zoom or any other virtual platform. Your prep is going to be the same as an in-person interview, but there are some extra attention to details that you need to watch. There are 4 key areas I'd like to highlight here in the next few minutes. Practice, practice, practice is the first one. How do you operate the video platform? The third one, what do you look like on the screen? And then finally, how do you prepare for the unexpected? Okay, so let me see here if I'm going to, I guess I'm still on. Is that right? Can you still hear me, John? Yes. All right. I was clicking on the wrong thing to get my screen to work, so it was clicking on something else. All right, here we go. See, I need to practice a little bit more doing my screen to make sure I'm advancing at the right place. There we go. What a timely example here on the practice, practice, practice slide. There are many program options out there, folks. Zoom is the most popular, but when you think about all the different platforms, we used to use WebEx in my Lee Heck Terracin world before we went to Zoom recently. There is Microsoft Teams. There's FaceTime even. That could be an option. But many companies are now using Zoom or Microsoft Teams as their platforms for communication. Some may even have other custom-made platforms within their company. What is the platform for your interview? Ask in advance. Ask your recruiter, whoever it is that you are scheduled to meet with, ask them, is the interview going to be on Zoom or is it something else? Because then once you know what that platform is, open that program ahead of time and see how you look. See how it works and just practice. It's real easy. You can pull up the screen, you can look and adjust lighting and everything for yourself so that you will put your best foot forward. Okay, how do you operate the video platform? Again, there are many options, so become familiar with the one that you will be using. Whatever that company's using, ask in advance so that you will know. Another important thing to keep in mind is use your laptop or desktop for the interview. Do not use your mobile device. You could, Zoom is available on my iPhone. I could use my iPhone. But the problem is, if you're using a desktop or a laptop, that screen stays put. And so you can move around yourself, but at least you can see a target of where you're at on the screen. How do you look? And you've got your hands free. Like in my case, I like to use my hands to talk. And this is really strange today, operating the computer and not having people in front of me talking with my hands. But think about that as you're interviewing too, because that frees you up during that time. Test your video and your audio. I did that today before I jumped on this session. I went in and I did a test for video and audio to make sure that everything was working. Could you see me? Could you hear me? And that was on my end, just testing it before I actually joined the team on the Zoom platform. Do a test run with a trusted friend. Surely you've got someone out there that you can ask, say, hey, I want to do a mock interview. I want to test and see how I look and how do I sound. It's okay to do something like that. But again, just do your practicing. Nothing wrong with that at all. Okay, what do you look like on screen? And this is something in the handout I'm going to send to you that will give some additional detail on how you can prep for this. This is very important. How is the angle of the camera looking at you? And sometimes you'll see people look like, you know, the camera's looking up at them, and that's not a very flattering angle. I like to put a stack of books in front of me, and then I set my computer on top of that stack of books. So then I can kind of tilt my screen so that it's kind of in a little way looking down at me. So it's a little more flattering. You kind of have to look and play with that to say, how are you coming across? Look at lighting, get a correct balance. You don't want it too dark and you don't want it too light. I've had clients I've met with on Zoom. Some of them are, it looks like I'm talking to a cave because I can't see them because it's so dark in their room. Other people, they have so much light on. See, John's playing with his light. They have so much light on that it's like they're washed out. I actually have a lamp sitting behind my laptop today, and it has several different levels of lighting, and I can change that and adjust my blinds that are also in front of me. I do that on purpose so that I can adjust depending on the time of day. I have an overhead light in my office. I have the lamp in front of me, and depending on what the light is coming in from the outside, I can get a better balance so that the interviewer can see my face and my expressions, and they kind of get a better idea of who I am. And you don't have to do any special makeup necessarily. I put my normal makeup on today, but I did do makeup and I did do lipstick, even though with masks these days, it kind of rubs off when you're wearing a mask, but I don't have to wear a mask when I'm virtual. So think about that. You know, you just do those normal prep things like you would if you were going to the interview in person. Full dressing for the interview is real important in my opinion as well. And that includes shoes. You know, we tell people when you're doing a phone interview, stand up when you talk because your voice will carry better. Well, when you're interviewing virtually, sitting at home, don't wear your sweats. Dress like you're going to that interview in person because that sets your attitude and your style, and put shoes on, okay? Just small tips like that, but they will make you feel better about yourself and they will make you feel more confident as you're going through this process. Okay, one more screen here on what do you look like. These are some reality checks. What does your background say about you? Make it clean and uncluttered. That's my rule of thumb. I have a very sterile looking background behind me. This is my actual office. I have some white painted doors with my light gray walls and a little plant and a picture that was painted by a special needs client from Stonebriar Church. I got that years ago for my career center work. I always take that with me when I set up a career center on site at a customer. And so right now I have that sitting kind of back here in the corner for my screen. This is my look. I don't want my bookshelves. I don't want my grandkids' pictures all showing in the background. I have those that I'm looking at right now in front of me, but behind me, I want that to be a clean, uncluttered look. That's real important for you to keep in mind. Pick your own style. You know, you have to communicate your own style. Each one of you is unique in your own way. But again, that just declutters the environment, keeps the focus on you and what you're talking about. Another question, what does your background noise say about you? When you're going into an interview, please don't run your dishwasher because 30 minutes into the interview, it's going to start beeping and going off. Mine does that often. Or your washing machine or your dryer. What does your background noise say about you? Dogs barking. My dogs are outside and they'll start barking at the craziest things. And when I'm on video like this, I always ask my husband to make sure he puts the dogs inside so that they won't be outside barking, because that's a way of controlling that background noise. So keep that in mind as well. You can't really get up and go take care of that. Also, think about uninvited guests from attending your interview, either pets or people. We've actually had circumstances happen like that, where someone is being interviewed and then their spouse walks in the office behind them. And so that person makes a cameo appearance, or maybe the dogs come in, or maybe the kids come in. So not that that's the end of the world necessarily, but sometimes it can be pretty embarrassing. So make sure that you're thinking about where's your room, where's your setting. Let people know when you're going to be interviewing that live in your home so that they can be taken care of and they won't bother you, so that you can try to minimize those distractions as well. Okay, we are almost to the end of this. What do you look like on screen? This is the last one where we talk about what you look like on screen. Remember to bring your engaging personality and your smile and your outstanding attitude. I know it feels really awkward talking to people on your screen because you aren't getting any interaction necessarily, but make sure that you're bringing those things so your true self comes out. Your body language still matters in a virtual interview. Again, don't slump back in your chair, sit up straight, make sure that you're well lit so that people can see you, that you can talk, they can hear you and hear the value that you bring. Act like the interviewer is just sitting across the table from you. That's an important tip here. You know, you're not just talking to a camera. There are people on the other side, okay? And here is a big tip. Prepare for the unexpected. That's my last big tip for the virtual world interviewing. Have you ever had a power outage? Oh yeah, I have those once in a while. Have you ever had an internet provider outage? Oh yes, my internet provider goes out once in a while too, even on good days without.
Sorry about that, Gail.
I hear something. Oh, see, prepare for the unexpected. What was
That's
that?
right. That's right.
Perfect timing, John. So think about that though. If your power goes out, what happens? If your internet's still on, oh, but see, my internet goes off when my power goes out. So you think about that. If you can't make the interview, a virtual interview on video because of those issues, what is your backup plan? Are there other issues too? What if you get sick? You know, what if you have a family emergency? All kinds of things may happen. My tip here is to have that interviewer's direct phone number, like you would for an in-person interview. I've had clients who have gotten lost on their way to the company, and guess what? They had that interviewer's cell phone and they called them and said, hey, I took a wrong turn, traffic is really bad, and it saves the day there. Okay, so think about those different things. What is your backup plan? Because it's not just like getting to the interview, What if your power or internet goes out? You have to have a backup plan. At least you can get a hold of them and let them know that there has been a crisis or an outage here. Okay, so you ace the interview. You make the most of the interview. You take the steps to stand out by following the different tips that we have to offer. And I would like to just remind you today to remember Jeremiah 29:11. The Lord does have plans for each and every one of you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, and to give you hope and a future. That is one of my favorite verses, and I stand on that so often. When things get really tough, I remember that the Lord has plans for me. And why am I going through what I'm going through now? Oh, is to be used down the road. All right. So that concludes the topical portion of the presentation. And I have on the screen here, if you want to make sure and make a note of my email address, the slide deck, the workbook on interviewing, and the virtual interviewing tip sheet. Those 3 documents I will email to each and every one of you, but you have to send me an email to gail.bridgeman@me.com and make sure it's GAYLE. And I will get that email and I will get that material back out to you as quick as I can, because I know that will be very helpful to be able to read through this information and do your preparation work. Okay, and now?
Well, Gail?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I mean, those are essentials, and you've gone into detail that we just I know, I can only speak for myself personally. We don't take the time to think about those things. For instance, I've been on a ton of virtual meetings. I have my iPad on the Career DFW Facebook page to monitor there, and I forgot to mute it. And I have an alarm on there because there's medication I'm supposed to take at 4 o'clock. And then there's my phone, and I didn't think about muting those 2 things. And there you go. And it's not the end of everything if that happens, but it just keeps it prevents you from panicking or getting thrown off course.
Exactly.
And losing your focus and sidetracking the conversation. So
Absolutely.
thank you very much for that. Now what do you want on the subject line of that email, please?
CTW Frisco.
CTW
CTW, Career Transition Workshop Frisco, CTW Frisco.
That's all they need to do.
I'd like copies from today's workshop.
Okay.
And I will send those 3 documents to each and every one of you. Glad to do that.
Okay. All right. So now we'll go to our panel, and if anybody has a question, again, it would be best if you typed it in the chat notes, begin it with a question mark, and then go ahead and type your question. I'm not seeing anything on Facebook comments. Jeff, am I missing anything there?
No, not a thing. It's all quiet.
And I'm very excited. I already have 3 emails that have come through for the attachment. So see, it's working, John.
Right.
Awesome.
Okay. All right. Melanie, did you get the information to send the email?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Yeah, Melanie was at an interview and had to join us a little late. And so she texted me about the information to get the resources that you're offering.
Yes.
Yeah, I really appreciate the topic, Gail.
Absolutely. Yeah. Melanie Thorpe, is that right? Yes, I got your email. Yeah. I see it showed up here. So I will, as soon as we finish today, I'll get those out to you.
Thank you.
I'd like to add one thing, to what Gail was talking about. One thing I think is real important, especially when you're doing a video interview, is you've got to remember to smile. And so I actually have a little smiley face. I'll put them in the chat box. And it goes right over my lens, so I know where to look when I'm talking to somebody. So I will put these, in the chat box, I'll put a document that has them on there. And there's different sizes depending on what size you need for your computer.
Okay, and let me quickly make sure everybody's aware that although this is being recorded and you can replay it on Career USA on LinkedIn or Career DFW on Facebook, if you want to save any of the text that's in the chat, when you open your chat box, in the lower right-hand corner is an icon of a page and the word file, and next to it, the word file is a circle with 3 dots in it. If you open those 3 dots, the first thing at the top says save chat. And if you're on a computer, it will save the chat as a text file so that you can review any information like Gail's email address or whatnot that may be in there. So there was a question that came in, and I'm trying to sequence through so that Gail, what is too early to follow up? In other words, what is too late to follow up? How many times is too many times to follow up? Because I know that Rex talked about it in his presentation. There's a key window that Rex likes to share, but what are your thoughts on the appropriate timeframes? Or Lori or any of you can chime in on that, but I'm going to ask Gail straightforward.
Absolutely. That's such a good question. It's what's real important when you're in the interview itself. At the conclusion of the interview, you may feel awkward, but say, when do you expect to make a decision on this role? And that person that you're meeting with might share with you, gosh, we have several more candidates to interview. You're the first, or we're almost ready to make a decision. And then at that point, ask them right there in the interview before you leave, may I follow up with you? May I follow up with you next Friday, a week from today? And if they say yes, that would be great, then put it on your calendar to do it. But I think first asking permission to follow up with them. What's the status of their circumstances? And you can even ask the interviewer, is it better that I call you or email you? At least give some choices there. That's my preference, but you ask it in the interview if you can follow up. But then don't forget to do that. And always, always write that thank you note. That's so important to let them know you appreciated their time. I would do that within 24 hours after you've completed the interview, especially if they're making a decision quickly. You want to get that courtesy in so that they remember you for that.
Very good. And if you do it by email, on most email platforms, there's a way to send an email with some stationary background. Don't do anything fancy like flowers, but maybe something that's professional and maybe has a little graphic to it.
Yes. The other thing I would recommend in a thank you note also, if you're doing that email, which today's environment, it's important to do it electronically, make sure that you have a signature block at the bottom of your email. That includes your name, your title. What do you do? Even if you're not working, you still do certain things. So your title of what you do, your phone number, your email address repeated, and your LinkedIn link.
URL, right.
Yeah. So think about that. It's a signature block. Most email platforms, you can construct that and have it standard and say, I want to include that with every email. It's okay to send that to family too. Just reminds them of what you do, right? So, but at least that way you're reminding that interviewer when you're writing the thank you note, what do you do and how to reach you? That way they don't have to go back and scrounge for your resume. So.
Now, go ahead.
And make sure that, you do that on your PC or Mac. Be sure also on your cell phone, because I get emails all the time. Jeff, give me a call, and it's from iPhone, and it's like, I got to guess, well, who could this be? And I just don't respond. So make sure beside your PC or Mac, also have your cell phone if you're using Yahoo Mail, Gmail, the Apple ID, the Apple Mail app, whatever it is you're using, make sure it's on every app that you do that you've got emails for.
Those are excellent points, Jeff. Thank you.
Yeah, and for anyone on the panel, is there a function on computers that I can check to make sure that the lighting is most effective? Now, before I release that question, I will say that if you're using Zoom, and I'm not familiar with WebEx or what's the other one? Teams, and there's another one that I'm losing right now.
Google Hangout. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's not so much anymore, but I know with Zoom, you can go through a lot of settings, and there are lighting settings on how it receives your image through the camera, as well as settings on the computer itself. So anybody got any great suggestions? Okay. Okay. We have no high-tech people here. So
I thought you were, John.
let me see. Let's see. To Lori Davis, is there a big difference between a corporate interview and a corporate interview? I think what's meant there is a corporate interview and an interview with a recruiter who is at a recruiting agency or a third-party recruiter.
I read that question too, John. Thank you. And I wasn't quite sure what was meant by it. But I will go with what you said. So, I mean, for me, if it's an interview, I would always be prepared and do all of those things that Gail recommended in her excellent presentation. I mean, treat an interview as an interview, but do ask questions, I mean, about the interview. Who am I going to be interviewing with? Is this going to be a technical interview? Is it going to be, you know, strictly a meet and greet or get to know you, you know, type of interview? Who am I going to be interviewing with? And Gail's right, you know, you pointed out I don't know that all people really think about being professional with everyone that they come in contact with in their search for a new job or a new career opportunity, because it is about networking. And I can tell you as a recruiter, for the people who are very pleasant and professional to me, it motivates me to want to go out of my way to help them, refer them, keep them in mind, work with their friends, you know, those kinds of things. If I have somebody that's very short and rude and impatient with me, and I am just trying to do my job, then that's difficult to try and help somebody. Because also, I mean, how am I going to present them to my hiring manager knowing that someone is negative or rude? I'm assuming, and I only have to assume, that if someone is like that and treating me that way, they're likely going to be that same way if they do get an interview with the hiring manager. So, but I would probably be reluctant to even pass someone like that on. So just a general blanket statement, if it's an interview, I would prepare and be professional and have that positive attitude for any type of interview, be it casual or formal.
Regardless of whether it's a third-party recruiter or
because sometimes you don't know what their role is either. So yes, I would be. So I'm assuming most folks would think the same. Go ahead.
So you stick to a higher standard and stay with that regardless of who you're talking to, and you'll always be a winner.
You never know who knows somebody that, you know, you may, I mean, if someone strikes you as like, oh my goodness, they are so polite, they're so professional. I mean, those people stand out too, in my mind, you know, they really stand out. So yes, I absolutely would, because you never know, or you never even know sometimes in certain settings, even if you're in a social setting, who may be a hiring manager or who may not
That's
be
correct.
too.
That's correct.
So yes,
And-
in an interview setting, I would always take the high road, be professional. You're not going to lose by doing that.
And I think one other point that I'm sure Gail would agree with is you need, when being polite and gracious, you can't fake that. You have to be authentic or genuine, because if you're faking it, it's gonna kill you every time.
Yes,
Exactly.
that's a great point, John. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So Mike DeSimone asked, the camera, should it be above or below, or at eye level? So in other words, you know, this thing, it makes a difference when you're on video. I'm looking directly at my camera right now, which makes it difficult for me to navigate stuff on my screen. But now I'm looking at the bottom of my screen, and you can certainly tell the difference that I'm not making eye-to-eye contact with you.
Exactly.
So, but any recommendations there?
See, I like the idea of having, like my camera on my laptop is at eye level right now, and it's angled just a bit so it's looking down at me, because I've got it on a stack of books in front of me.
Right.
My stack of books is about maybe 10 inches tall.
Mhm.
And then my laptop, which is a MacBook Pro, so it's a very small, lightweight computer, but it's sitting up on top of this stack of books because of where my camera's at on my laptop. Some people have different camera setups. They actually have cameras that you can have separate from your laptop or computer.
Right.
And they've even got lights and stuff to go around them. I mean, I've seen people doing professional stuff. Maybe Foster does that, right? There we go. See? Exactly.
Well, this is a secondary camera. I'm using my built-in camera on my laptop for this call, but I can also plug this in and have a secondary camera as well.
Exactly. So, but
And-
I like it kind of just angled down just a tad bit so you can look at it and make eye contact, but I can also look at my screen and look like I'm making eye contact with you. Now, if I'm looking at pictures across the top, it looks like I'm not looking at any of you. So that's a hard trick that you have to learn when you're working on screen like this, especially with a group of people. So,
Yeah,
Well-
quick follow-up if I could, because I like to take notes during the interview, and so I usually would look at the second monitor, so I would look like this. Is that terribly rude, or is that all right? Because I only do it for a quick second and look back.
yeah. I think that's understandable, but I think if I'm interviewing you, I like the frontal look right now that you have where it looks like you're looking at me.
Mhm.
Though, I mean, you're not. I mean, it's like we're all sitting here looking at our computer monitors, but if you're looking sideways, then it might look like you're looking at, like you're distracted or paying attention to something else. That would be my thoughts. So,
And
Well-
Mike, I mean, you can shrink down your Zoom window so that it's, you can just have a small picture so you can see the person right underneath your camera and still have your Word document or whatever, your notes document up just below it so you can sit there and be typing away and you're not having to turn to another monitor.
That's a good idea. I have a laptop, so the screen's a little smaller, but I can still probably finagle it. So cool.
Right.
yeah.
Or Mike might even ask the interviewer if do they mind if you take notes, and then they'll know that you kind of already prepared them ahead of time, like, oh, he's just taking notes, but at least you won't assume that you're being distracted.
Exactly. One of the things I like about stacking my computer, sitting it on top of a stack of books in front of me, I have now my documents right here, and I can have those laying in front of me where I can actually take notes down here in front of my computer, but yet you can't see what I'm doing if I'm discreet about it, because you can't see any of this stuff here in front of me for note taking. So that's kind of nice too, because it keeps it in that focal point there. So.
Well, Suzanne has a question. She states a situation she was in. I had a Skype interview with 3 people. I could only see 2 of them, and they all wore masks. The person I couldn't see was very difficult to hear and to understand. I just struggled and didn't say anything. How do you politely point this out?
Mm.
I again, being authentic and being nice, you just say, wow, I don't know which part of this communication is acting up, whether it's the internet connection or what, but I apologize. I'm having difficulty hearing someone, and I can't see them. And I don't, I want to make the best of your time. So are there any adjustments you can make, or can we start this call over again, or I don't know. Go ahead. Whoever wants to jump in.
I think, guys, when communication is being made, you want to connect with that person directly. So if that person is asking you a question that requires a response, and you are not, you're not able to hear them, or even if you feel as though they are involved, or maybe they're the big boss or whatever that is going to ask a question that requires a response, make sure to let them know that you aren't able to discern what they're saying, or just what John said. So when you say, hey, I can't hear you, it's automatic. We all automatically start readjusting things. You pretty much don't have to ask them to can you do something? But it's very important that we get that person's question answered, whoever is that's interviewing us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Chris Carnell asked Gail, I've been doing thank you video embedded in email. I have had 3 responses that were positive about that media. I understand and appreciate traditions, but do you see any negatives with leveraging this technology?
I think that's very interesting. I have not personally seen a video thank you like that. I'd be curious to know what that looks like. What does that entail? But I've not seen that done. What do you guys think, Foster?
Well,
We teach a lot of that, or I say we, Trevor and Mark teach a lot of that on the radio show, talk about that kind of thing. Text is still, because of where we are right now, text is still preferred. Video is upcoming, because every time you turn on LinkedIn, every time you turn on Facebook, everything, what do you see? You see video. In the future, in the very near future, I think it's going to take over. But right now, it has not. I have not heard of anyone having a negative response to it. So one thing you want to think about is, maybe if you are trying to deliver a video thank you or something like that, will it get through the firewalls of wherever you're sending it? That's about the only thing that negative that I can think of for it, Chris. That's a good question. I'm surprised you and I didn't talk about that a while ago.
Well, Maureen mentioned, Chris, how long is your video? Let me say this. My Dell computer is 7 years old, and it has the camera on it. I can turn that on and record a video and save it, and I could embed that in an email on an older computer. Now, if you've got a 15-year-old computer, that ain't going to happen. But the other question is, Maureen asked Chris, how long is your video? That's crucial, because if your video takes up too much data, your email provider will not send that video embedded in the email. I think my Yahoo Mail has a 50 megabyte cap on it. I'm not sure. I'll have to check that. So you want to make it short and succinct. Mark and Trevor in their workshops talk about BombBomb, but BombBomb is a video service. It's a subscription service, and we don't normally advertise tools that cost money, because people looking for employment, cash flow is premium, and we want to direct them towards free resources wherever possible. So, but I mean, I can do it on my machine, and it's 7 years old.
The other thing you can also do is everybody can get a free Zoom account. So you can do Zoom. You don't have to have anybody else on, and you can sit there and just record yourself And if you don't like it, you hit stop and you hit record, you start over again, record again. And Zoom will give you a very compressed message. I know that when this recording's done, it'll be very, very compressed. If I was trying to edit it, it would become 2 to 3 times longer than what it, or bigger than what it currently is. So Zoom is really good about giving you a compressed message. And if you keep it short, you'll be able to attach that without a problem.
Yeah, right now, video messaging using an email platform is a very early adopting practice.
Yes.
It can differentiate you with all of the thank yous and all of those things. What I found out, and Jeff brought this out about 2 or 3 sessions ago, there's the tactile experience of having a thank you card in your hand, opening up that note. That thank you card is on the hiring manager's desk for months. Literally, and hiring managers have told me, guess what Maureen Martin did? She sent me this great thank you note, and they'll show it to me, and I think, wow, that is a really strong impact, guys.
I happen to have 3 thank you notes sitting here on my counter or on my bookshelf that job seekers have sent me. So, they're there and they'll continue to be there. The birthday cards come and go, but the thank you notes from job seekers will be there for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Remember that story from one of our workshops where someone wrote a thank you note, sent it in, and then when the person, I think after the phone interview, and then when that candidate went in for the in-person interview, that hiring manager came out with that thank you note attached to their file. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Now, Chris Cornell says Loom is free. I'm not familiar with Loom, and I'm assuming that's not a typo. He meant Loom, not Zoom. But as Gail said in her presentation, if you're going to send a handwritten thank you note, which Rex's point is very, very solid, you have to have a conversation with the people and see if their physical address, if they're working virtually, because I know my son works for USAA and they're not letting people back in the office until after January 1st. So you have to determine what the best course is if you're going to do a snail mail hand printed thank you note, which is, like Rex said, is always the most effective because it's very personal when it's in your own handwriting.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. May I ask, Chris, what platform do you use for your video thank yous?
So I'll use Loom, Loom.
Loom, okay.
And it's free, and there's a paid version. Or I will utilize BombBomb, which has already been mentioned here.
Yeah, okay.
But to Rex's point, I have never had anybody frown upon receiving a handwritten thank you note, ever. So sometimes it's safer to play the traditional way. And then maybe if you're being interviewed by the younger gen set, they may appreciate the technology push instead.
I want to say something that might be a little controversial. So if y'all throw something at me, I understand.
Make it quick.
It's actually Andy's truth. But guys, some of us, and we should get with that person that we trust and tell us a little bit about how our personality is. Not everybody has a vibrant personality on video. If we are a little bit conservative, it will come across on video. In that case, definitely you want to send a handwritten message. If you put together a video and you're kind of boring and oh my goodness, we're not getting it done, Gail Bridgeman. And no, I'm kidding. Everybody that's here seems to have a good personality for video. But it's something to think about, guys. And because if we're considering video, those accountability groups that we get with, the people that are supposed to be able to hurt our feelings and we're not, slice their jugular open. Ask those folks, how is my personality? How do I come across when I am distributing information?
Yeah.
Oh, good. I survived and nobody threw anything at me.
Get a critique. Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
And it was brought up earlier to do that, to do a video with friends through free Zoom, as Jeff Morris said and whatnot. And Gail, did you ever answer the question up front about when to do the follow-up, the timing on the follow-up? Because Maureen said she's always done a handwritten note, but these days with the mail not flowing through like it should, virtual, of course, you don't have to worry about too much as long as you have the right email address, but the timing on the follow-up.
Well, if you think about the follow-up, my key is that in the interview, we get to the end of the interview and I have that conversation with the person who just interviewed and say, when do you expect to make a decision on this position? Because I'm very interested. I'd really like this job. And so then that person says, well, we have several more candidates to interview. It's probably going to be a week. Then my question during the interview is, may I contact you in a week to see where things stand? And may I call you or email you? Which would you prefer? So at least that way you're getting a buy-in from the person, like, yes, you can contact me, emails preferred. The danger is you don't want to be calling them every single day. You don't want to be bugging them for follow-up, because especially if you end up not being the person that they want to choose, they're just thinking, oh Lord, this person's calling me again. You know, so you don't want to end up being that thorn in the side either. So I would ask that at the interview itself. And if you don't get any feedback from them directly, there's nothing wrong with waiting a week and then sending an email or even making a phone call and just saying, I'm checking in on the meeting we had last week, seeing where you're at on the roll.
One other thing I've heard that works really well, that, you know, because of the US mail issues or whatever, is handwrite your note, take a picture of it, and attach it to the email.
That's a thought.
Excellent. Excellent.
That's clever.
Yeah.
I liked what Nora said in the chat too. She sends
Nora's,
and she follows up with a handwritten one as well. That's a great idea too.
It is. It is a great idea.
But the follow-up should be negotiated, so to speak, but the thank you should be as quickly as possible.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Well, we're past 4:30, folks. So
time flies.
Yeah, it does. So next week, which is October 13th.
Oops.
Whoops.
Hold on, I can fix that.
Dang, he's quick. That would have taken me half an hour to do. Networking and building relationships, presented by none other than Jeff Morris himself. And so I want to thank you all for joining. And if you wouldn't mind, I'd like just to thank our Heavenly Father with a short prayer, and we'll go ahead and conclude this. So, dear Father, thank you for everybody who attended this meeting. Thank you for the skills and the wisdom of the team who helps to guide us and counsel us. And you know our desire for employment that we seek, and we ask that you open doors for new opportunities to all the people attending here who are seeking employment. Give them the words to speak and the courage to share who they are authentically and what they can do. If there's any shyness, we ask you to just help them to understand that they are creations of a loving God, and they have the power and the your backing. You've got our back, Lord. So give them the confidence that can only come from you. So we trust in you, and we put this all in your hands and ask you to bless their journeys to their next employment as quickly as possible. And we ask that in the name of your Son, Jesus, our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, John.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. God bless you, and
thank you, John.
We'll talk to you soon.
All
Don't
right.
forget to save that chat.
All right.